Shabbat Tov and Shalom on the Sabbath day. Welcome to the Philadelphia Assemblies. Today is the 6th day of the 5th month. The new moon or full moon, as we go by Psalms 81 verse 3 as being the new moon, the full moon, was on Monday. The daytime hours happened Sunday night, all Monday. Today, according to the sacred calendar, it is the 6th day of the 5th month of the year 57 and 80. It's also August the 8th, 2020 on the Gregorian calendar. Shabbat, Sabbath day, Saturday. Okay, now I know Saturday is a pagan name, but back when the scriptures were written down, there was no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, any of those days. It was just the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, which is the preparation day, and the Sabbath. That was it. Okay? And according to what I believe the scripture said, Yahuwah, by his power, which is his Ruach, created everything that was created by the 6th day. And then on the 7th day, he rested. Okay? And I think that cycle has been going on continually. And if you look in the older encyclopedias, you'll look up the weekly cycle. Don't look up anything else of that. Look up the weekly cycle. And you'll find as far back as they've been keeping records, it's always never been interrupted. Okay? And so I believe that fits with what Scripture says. Hebrews chapter 4 says that his work was finished from the foundations of the world. To me, that tells me he worked 6 days, he rested, 6 more days we work, and then 7th day we rest. I think that's a perpetual cycle. But that's my little rant for the day, okay? We're going to continue. Actually, we're going to conclude our expository teaching on the 2nd Chronicles today. We're going to start in chapter 31, and we're going to finish it up. So it might not be exactly an hour as it always is. Then again, we'll just let Yahuwah set the time limit on this today. So we're going to go and we're going to face towards the east where the temple was. Okay, we've been reading a lot about the temple lately. We know it was in Jerusalem. So we're going to turn towards Jerusalem where it was and where it's prophesied to be again. Okay. Almighty Father Yahuwah, we praise you in all things. Father, we thank you for your hedge of protection around us, that you protected us, that you got us through another week, and here we are resting on your Sabbath day. Father, we pray that you would stay this pandemic, Father, that you'd either give them the power to produce a real vaccine that would set it off, or you would stop the plague. In any case, we know you control all things, Father, but help us to stay this so no more people will die. Father, for those that are sick, we ask your healing. For those that have passed away, we ask their families to have the peace that passes understanding. Father, we ask that you would comfort them in this time of great sorrow. Father, we ask that you would bless us and that you would, as you have, continue to bless us. And we ask that you would anoint us, give us that extra unction of your Ruach HaKodesh today, Father, so that we could have more understanding of your word. We ask that these be your words and not mine. We ask it in your precious Son, Yahushua's name. Amen. Second Chronicles, chapter 31, verse 1. Now when all this was finished, okay, and we know that we just talked about that in the last chapter. It said, then the priests and the Levites arose and blessed the people, and their voices were heard, and their prayers came up. So when they finished all those things that we just talked about talking about, okay, then all of Israel that were present went out to the cities of Yehuda, in the area that we know is the southern part of Israel, okay, and break the images in pieces, okay, talking about things that they idols and things that they were worshiping, and cut down the groves and threw down the high places and the altars out of all Yehuda, and Benjamin and in Ephraim also, Manasseh, until they had utterly destroyed them all. Okay, awesome. Then all the Ben of Israel returned every man to his possession and to their own cities. And Hezekiah appointed the courses of the priests and the Levites after their courses. Okay? So courses were like their little serving time. You know, it went so many months or so many days. I'm not positive on the length of that, but they all had that. We could see that in the New Testament, in the Gospel of John, when we're talking about, the birth of his father Zechariah, Johann the Immerser, or John the Baptist. People know him by now, but his father was Hezekiah, and he was in, or Zechariah. I can't recall, and I'm just going off of memory, but his father was in his course because he was a Levite when Johann the Immerser was conceived. Every man according, or he just got finished his service. Okay. Every man according to his service, the priests and the Levites, and that would be the Kohanim, the priests, and the Levites for burnt offerings and for peace offerings, to minister and to give thanks and to praise the gates of the camp. Okay, it says tents there. Of the camp would have been a better translation, of Yahuwah, or the congregation of Yahuwah. He appointed also kings, portions of his substance, or his share, okay, for the burnt offerings, that is, for the morning and the evening burnt offerings, and the burnt offerings for the Shabbats, or the Sabbaths, okay, and for new moons, and for set feasts, as it was written in the Torah of Yahuwah, okay, that's where it's written. Book of Numbers, also, that's where the sacrifices and things were written in the book of Numbers, okay, verse 4. Moreover, he commanded the people that dwelt in Jerusalem to give share due to the priests. Okay, so we know in the Torah it told how much the priest was going to get. Okay, the Kohanim, plural, and the Levites, that they might be encouraged in the law, or the Torah of Yahuwah. And as soon as the commandment came abroad, the Ben of Israel brought in abundance the first fruits of the grain offerings. Okay, I added offerings, wine and oil offerings, and honey, and all the increase of their fields, and the tithe, okay, of all the things brought they in abundantly. So that just to let you know that they brought a tenth part of all, just as it was commanded. It was abundant. And concerning the Ben of Israel and Yehudah, because they are separate now, the northern tribes and the southern tribes, that dwell in the cities of Yehudah, they also brought in the tithe of the oxen and sheep, and the tithe of the set-apart things, which were set apart unto Yahuwah their Elohim, and laid them by heaps. In the 3rd month they began to lay the foundation of the heaps, or the beginning of the heaps, and finished them in the 7th month, because that's when they're getting ready to make offering, in the 7th month on the Day of Atonement. Okay, that's what they were getting ready to do here. In the 7th month. I saw that at the end of that. Where am I? Okay, verse 8. And when Hezekiah the princes came and saw the heaps, they blessed Yahuwah, or they thanked Yahuwah and his people Israel, both northern and southern, okay, that had done this. And Hezekiah questioned the Kohanim, okay, or priest, and the Levites concerning the heaps. And Azariah, the chief priest, or the high priest of the house of Zodok, this is the true priesthood that comes out of this Zodokite priesthood we're talking about here often, answered him and said, since the people began to bring the offerings into the house of Yahuwah, we have had enough to eat, and have lots left over. Okay? For Yahuwah has blessed his people, and that which is left in that is this great store. That's what's left over after they got finished. Okay? And that's awesome. And you could tell that today. If you give Yahuwah his 10th part, he's going to make sure you got plenty. And if you don't, you're going to be striving all the time just to make ends meet. Okay? Some people don't believe in tithe anymore. I do. I think that, it's a perpetual thing we should be doing and continuing in, and if we want to be blessed. If you want to be blessed with abundance, tithe. If you don't tithe. Okay, verse 11. Then Hezekiah commanded to prepare rooms in the house of Yahuwah, and they prepared them. Verse 12. And brought in the offerings and the tithes, and because offerings are free will offerings, things that aren't set by a tenth, and the dedicated things faithfully, over which Conaniah, the Levite, was ruler, and Shimeiah, his brother, was the next in line. Okay, and Jehiel, and Azariah, and Azariah, and Nathan, and Asahel, and Jeremoth, and Jozabad, and Eliel, and Ishmachiah, and Mahath, and Benaniah were overseers. Okay, so they made sure things were done properly under the hand of Conaniah and Shimei his brother, at the commandment of Hezekiah the king, and Azariah the ruler of the house of Elohim. Okay, it doesn't say Yahuwah this time, it says Elohim. Verse 14, and Korah the son of Imnah the Levite, the porter, or the gatekeeper, or the east gatekeeper, was over the freewill offerings of Elohim to distribute the oblations, or offerings, that's what oblation means, of Yahuwah, and the most set apart things. 15. And next him were Eden and Minanim and Yeshua and Shimei and Shemaiah and Amariah and Shechaniah in the cities of the priests in their assigned office to give to their brethren by courses or divisions, as well to give as to the small. So everything that had to be distributed, that's what they're talking about here. Besides their genealogy of males from 3 years old and upward, even unto everyone that entered into the house of Yahuwah, his daily oblations or offerings for their service and their charges according to their oblations or courses. I'm not sure that's the same one that I'm looking at there. That's talking about divisions, those courses, and again, time periods that they were serving in the temple. Verse 17, both to the genealogy of the priests by the house of their fathers and the Levites from the 20 years old and upward in their charges by their courses, okay, or divisions. And to the genealogy of all their little ones, their wives, and their ben, and their daughters, through all the congregation, for in their set office they sanctified or set themselves apart in their solemn service. Verse 19, also the ben of Aaron, the priest, or the Kohanim, which were in the fields of the suburbs, or the pasture lands of their cities, in every several city, the men that were expressed by name, to give portion to all the males among the bit Kohanim, or the priests, and to all that were reckoned or counted by genealogies among the Levites. And thus did Hezekiah throughout all Yehudah, and work that which was good and right and true before Yahuwah his Elohim. And in every work that he began in the service of the house of Elohim, and in the Torah, and in the commandments to seek his Elohim, he did it with all his heart and purpose. Okay? Verse 32. Chapter 32. After these things, and the establishment thereof, in other words, he'd set all those things in order, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and entered into Yehudah and encamped against the fortified cities and thought to win them for himself. So he camped around them, thinking of attacking them to take them for himself. So, and when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib was come, and that he intended to fight against Jerusalem, he took counsel with his princes and his mighty men to stop the waters of the springs which were outside the city, and they did help him. So there was gathered much people together, who stopped all the fountains and the brooks that ran through the midst of the land, saying, Why should the king of Assyria come and find much water? Also he strengthened himself and built up all the wall that was broken, and raised it up to the towers, and another wall outside, and repaired Milo in the city of Dawood, and made weapons and shields in abundance. And he set captains of war over the people, and gathered them together to him in the street, or the square actually, of the gate of the city, and spake encouragingly to them. Verse 7, But be strong and courageous, be not afraid, nor dismayed, for the king of Assyria, nor for all the multitudes that is with him, for there be more with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh. Here's the answer, but with us is Yahuwah our Elohim, to help us and to fight our battles. And the people relied upon the words of Hezekiah, king of Yehuda. See, they knew they didn't have an arm of flesh that was to protect them. They had the arm of Yahuwah, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, the hornet of Yahuwah, the Malach of Yahuwah. That's who was going to fight for them, and they already knew that. Verse 10. Thus saith Sennacherib, king of, did I read it? 9. After that, this did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, send his servants, I did not, to Jerusalem. But he himself laid siege against Lachish, and all his power with him, his army, that's what backed him up, unto Hezekiah, king of Yehuda, and unto all Yehuda that were at Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith Sennacherib. Notice how the messenger says, Thus saith Sennacherib, kind of like when it says, Thus saith Yahuwah all the time. And his messenger, the Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? So, Thus saith Sennacherib, king of Assyria, whereon do you trust, that you abide in the siege in Jerusalem? In other words, do you think you can withstand the siege that's coming? Doth not Hezekiah persuade you to give over himself to die by famine and by thirst, saying, Yahuwah our Elohim shall deliver us out of the hand of the king of Assyria? He's asking a question. Hath not the same Hezekiah taken away his shrines, or his high places, other places to worship? Because he knew he was only supposed to be worshiping in Jerusalem. Okay, that's why he did that. And his altars, and commanded Yehuda and Jerusalem, saying, Ye shall worship before one altar, and burn incense upon it. That's a question again. Know ye not what I and my fathers have done unto all the people of other lands? Have you not seen what we did to all these other ones that resisted us? Were the Elohim of the nations of those lands anyways able, or were they in any way able to deliver their lands out of my hand? That's thus saith Sennacherib. Okay, he's asking them, who there among all the Elohim of those nations that my fathers utterly destroyed, that could deliver his people out of mine hand, that your Elohim should be able to deliver you out of my hand? That's a question. Do you think that yours Elohim is going to be able to save you? Now therefore, let not Hezekiah deceive you. That's what Sennacherib's saying. Don't let him deceive you, nor persuade you on this manner, neither yet believe him. For no Elohim of any nation or kingdom was able to deliver his people out of my hand and out of the land of my fathers, how much less shall your Elohim deliver you out of my hand? He's trying to scare the people. He's using a scare tactic. And his servants spake yet more against Yahuwah Elohim and against his servant Hezekiah. He wrote also letters to insult or rail on, insult Yahuwah Elohim of Israel. I think that was a dumb move, don't you? Okay, for him to be so bold, so proud that he thinks that he's stronger than the living Elohim. Okay, because I guess he didn't believe in him, like a lot of these today don't believe either. And to speak, he also wrote letters, which I said, to insult Yahuwah Elohim of Israel and to speak against him, saying, as the Elohim of the nations of other lands have not delivered their people out of my hand, so shall not the Elohim of Hezekiah deliver his people out of my hand. That's a statement. That's not a question. That's bold. Okay. Then they cried with a loud voice in the Jews' speech, which the Jews' speech at that time would have been Hebrew. Okay. Into the people of Jerusalem that were on the wall, frighten them. That's why he said it, just like they used fear as a tactic, and to terrify them that they might take the city. And they spake against the Elohim of Jerusalem as against the Elohim of the people of the earth, which were the works of the hands of men. Now that's the key. See, all the other Elohims of the rest of the earth are just the works of the hands of men. But they're fixing to find out that the Elohim of Israel is the true Elohim, and there's no other besides Elohim. Okay? And Yahuwah and his Ruach, or spirit. Okay, that's it. 20. And for this cause Hezekiah the king and the prophet Isaiah, I can't, for whatever mind, I bright blank, the prophet Isaiah, the Ben of Amos, prayed and cried to the Shamayim, to the heavens. Verse 21, and Yahuwah sent a Malach, singular, which cut off all the mighty men of valor and the leaders and the captains in the camp of the king of Assyria. I think he might have messed up, don't you? So he returned with shame of face to his own land, and when he was come into the house of his Elohim, they that came forth of his own insides, in other words, this would have been talking about his immediate family, slew him there with a sword. Thus Yahuwah saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib the king of Assyria, and from the hand of all others, and guided them on every side. Because they kept his commandments. And they destroyed all the shrines and the high places and things. Verse 23. And many brought gifts unto Yahuwah to Jerusalem, and they also gave choice things to Hezekiah, king of Yehudah, so that he was magnified in the sight of all nations from then on, the rest of his life. In those days Hezekiah was sick to death, and prayed unto Yahuwah, and he spake unto him. He gave him a sign, or a miraculous sign actually, but Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him. For his heart was proud, therefore there was wrath upon him, and upon Yehudah and Jerusalem. See how quickly sometimes people change. Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of Yahuwah came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah. And Hezekiah had exceeding much riches, or he had a whole lot of riches and honor. And he made himself treasuries for silver and for gold and for precious stones and for spices and for shields and for all manner of valuable articles. Storehouses also for the increase of grain and wine and oil and stalls for all manner of beasts and sheepfolds for flocks. Moreover, he provided him cities and possessions of flocks and herds in abundance, for Elohim had given him substance or great wealth. This same Hezekiah also stopped the upper watercourse of Gihon and brought it straight down to the west side of the city of Dawood. And Hezekiah prospered in all his works. However, in the business of the ambassadors of the princes of Babylon, who sent him to inquire of the wonder that was done in the land, Elohim left him to try him, or to test him. He pulled his power back to test Hezekiah, that he might know all that was in his heart, Hezekiah's heart. Verse 32, now the rest of the acts of Hezekiah. See, that's how come Yahuwah knows what's going on in our heart, because he sees what's going on in our actions. See, that's the same thing. If you're not keeping his commandments, he knows that you're not believing him, you're not trusting him. Same thing here. He's testing Hezekiah to see what he will do. And his goodness, behold, they are written in the vision of Isaiah the prophet, which is another book we don't have today, the son of Amos, and in the book of the kings of Yehuda and Israel. It's not, at least way it's not in the standard copy of the King James Bible. Let's just put it that way. Or most any modern translations. And Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the chiefest of the tombs of the sons of Dawood, and all Yehuda and the inhabitants of Jerusalem did him honor at his death, and Manasseh his ben reigned in his stead. Chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, but did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah, like unto the abominations of the nations. Okay? Detestable practices of the nations. Got heathen in the King James, same word they've been translating over and over again as the nations. Whom Yahuwah had cast out before the ben of Israel. So we know the Ammonite, the Hivite, the Hittite, all those ones like that. He's doing according to their ways instead of the ways that's commanded of by Yahuwah. For he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had broken down. And he erected altars for Balaam. Okay, and this is again sun gods, plural, because got the I am on the end means more than one, not just Baal, but Balaam, lords, okay, and made groves and worshipped all the host. That would have been all the planetary things that they could see in the stars of the Shamayim, and served them. Terrible sin. Also, he built altars in the house of Yahuwah. Therefore, Yahuwah had said, in Jerusalem shall my name be forever. And he did that there. Verse 5, and he built altars for all the host of the Shamayim in the two courts of the house of Yahuwah. And he caused his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the Hin, or son of Hinnom. Okay, this valley of Hinnom is Gehenna in Greek later on. So we're talking about this is all pointing towards the lake of fire. And we'll understand this more as we read. Also he practiced times, or practiced holidays, I'll put it that way, or holy days of these other nations, and used enchantments, and used witchcraft or sorcery. He used sorcery and dealt with mediums or familiar spirits, and with spiritualists or wizards. He worked much evil in the sight of Yahuwah to provoke him to anger. And he set a carved image, the idol which he had made in the house of Elohim, of which Elohim had said to Dawood and to Solomon his son, this house. This is the house, okay? And this is all in red in this Sword Bible, so it's thus saith Yahuwah. And this is what Elohim had said, okay? In this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen before all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. And he had desecrated this place. Neither will I any more remove the foot of Israel from out of the land, which I have appointed for the fathers, so that they will take heed to do all that I have commanded them, according to the whole Torah and the statutes and the ordinance by the hand of Moshe. That is all thus saith Yahuwah. It's just reminding us of what he had already said to Dawood and to Solomon. Verse 9. So Manasseh made Yehudah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, to err or to sin, and to do worse than the nations whom Yahuwah had destroyed before the bin of Israel. Now, why it's worse for them to do it? Because they're Israel. Okay? Either Yehudah or Israel, it doesn't matter. They were his chosen people. And not only that, they did it in the city of Jerusalem, that he had placed his name there forever and promised never to move that away from them. This guy had done this. Okay? Verse 10. And Yahuwah spake to Manasseh and to his people, but they would not listen. Therefore Yahuwah brought upon them the captains of the host of the king of Assyria, which took Manasseh with hooks. With hooks. Took Manasseh, I lost my spot there. With hooks, and bound him with fetters, and carried him to Babylon. And when he was distressed, or in much distress, he besought Yahuwah his Elohim, and humbled himself greatly before Elohim of his fathers, almost to death, and prayed unto him. And he was moved by his plea, and heard his appeal. Elohim heard his appeal, and brought him again to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that Yahuwah, he was Elohim. Now after this, he built a wall outside the city of Dawood, on the west side of Gihon, in the valley, even to the entering in at the fish gate, and surrounded by Ophel, and raised it up a very great height, and put captains of war in all the fortified cities of Yehudah. And he took away the strange Elohim and the idol out of the house of Yahuwah, and all the altars that he had built in the mount of the house of Yahuwah and in Jerusalem, and cast them out of the city. And he repaired the altar of Yahuwah, and sacrificed thereon peace offerings and thank offerings, and commanded Yehudah to serve Yahuwah Elohim of Israel. Nevertheless, the people did sacrifice still in the high places, so he didn't tear those down. Yet unto Yahuwah their Elohim only. So in other words, they went and sacrificed and worship in these other places that they weren't supposed to be worshiping in, but it was to Elohim. Okay, so don't think it was to other Elohim, but to our Elohim only, because it's big G here. Verse 18, now the rest of the acts of Manasseh and his prayers unto Elohim, and the words of the seers, or the prophets, that spake to him in the name of Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel. His prayer also, and how Elohim was entreated of him, and all his sin and his trespass, and the places wherein he built high places, and set up shrines or groves, and graven images before he was humbled, behold, they are written among the sayings of the seers, or the history of the seers. So Manasseh slept with his fathers, and they buried him in his own house, and Ammon, his ben, reigned in his stead. And Ammon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. But he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah. as did Manasseh his father. For Amon sacrificed unto the carved images, or the idols, which Manasseh his father had made, and served them, and humbled not himself before Yahuwah, as Manasseh his father had humbled himself. But Amon increased the guilt on Israel, and his servants conspired against him, and slew him in his own house. But the people of the land slew all them that had conspired against King Amon. And the people of the land made Josiah his son king in his stead. Josiah is very famous in this, okay? Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign. He was little. And he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. And he did that which was right in the sight of Yahuwah, and he walked in the ways of David his father, which wasn't his direct father, but he was his descendant, and turned aside neither to the right hand nor to the left. For in the eighth year of his reign, so he would have been 16 then, while he was yet young, he began to seek after the Elohim of David his father. And in the 20th year, he began to cleanse, okay? He began to cleanse Yehudah and Jerusalem from the high places and the groves, or the shrines, and that's what it's talking about. Got rid of all those other places that they worshiped, and the carved images and the molten images. So he purged or cleansed Yehudah. Verse 4, and they break down the altars of Balaam, okay, the sun gods, in his presence, and in the images that were on high above them. He cut down the groves of the shrines, and the carved images, and the molten images. He brake in pieces and made dust of them, and scattered it upon the graves of them that had sacrificed unto them. And he burnt the bones of the priests upon their altars, and cleansed Yehudah and Jerusalem. And so did he in the cities of Manasseh and Ephraim and Simeon, even unto Naphtali, with their cutting tools round about. And when he had broken down the altars and the groves of the shrines, and had beaten the graven images into powder, and cut down all the idols throughout all the land of Jerusalem, he returned to Jerusalem. Now in the 18th year of his reign, he had completely purged, cleansed the land and the house. He sent Shaphan, the Ben of Azaliah, and Maaseiah, the governor of the city, and Joah, the Ben of Joahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of Yahuwah his Elohim. And when they came to Hilkiah, the high priest, they delivered the money that was brought into the house of Elohim, which the Levites that kept the doors had gathered of the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, and all of the remnant of Israel, and of all Yehudah and Benjamin. And they returned to Jerusalem. And they put it in the hand of the workmen that had the oversight of the house of Yahuwah, and they gave it to the workmen that worked in the house of Yahuwah to repair and restore the house, even to the artificers, okay, or the carpenters and builders gave they it, to buy cut stone and timbers of couplings, and to the floor of the house which the kings of Yehudah had destroyed. And the men did work faithfully, and overseers of them was Jahath and Obadiah, the Levites of the Ben of Meriah, and Zechariah and Meshullam of the son of the Ben of the Kohathites, to set it forward, and others of the Levites, all that were skillful with instruments of music. Okay? Also they were over the bearers of the burdens, the ones that carried things around, and were overseers of all that wrought the work in any manner of service, and the Levites there were scribes and officers and gatekeepers. And when they brought out the money that was brought into the house of Yahuwah, Hilkiah the priest found a book of the Torah of Yahuwah given by Moses. He found the book of the Torah given by Moshe. 15, and Hilkiah answered and said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the Torah in the house of Yahuwah. And Hilkiah delivered the book to Shaphan. And Shaphan carried the book to the king and brought the king word back again, saying, all that was committed to your servants, they do it. And they have emptied out the money that was found in the house of Yahuwah and have delivered it into the hands of the overseers and to the hand of the workmen. And Shaphan the scribe, the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest have given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. And it came to pass, when the king heard of the words of the Torah, that he tore his clothing. In other words, he hadn't done everything, and he knew what Israel had done, okay, as a whole. And the king commanded Hilkiah and Ahikam the ben of Shaphan, and Abdon the son of Micah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Isaiah, a servant of the king, saying, go inquire of Yahuwah for me, and for them that are left in Israel and in Yehudah, concerning the words of the book that is found. For great is the anger of Yahuwah that is poured out upon us, because our fathers have not kept the word of Yahuwah to do after all that is written in this book, the Torah. And Hilkiah and they that the king had appointed went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shulem, the ben of Tikvah, the ben of Hasra, keeper of the wardrobe. This was added. Now she dwelt in Jerusalem in the college, or the second quarter, and they spake to her that effect, or they told her that. Okay? Verse 23, and she answered them, thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, this prophetess. And obviously she was a true prophetess, because the next part of this is in red. Behold, I will bring evil upon this place and upon the inhabitants thereof, even all the curses that are written in the book. You know what that's all about. Which they have read before the king of Yehudah, because they have forsaken me and have burned incense unto other Elohim, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath shall be poured out upon this place, and shall not be put out. Okay? And as for the king of Yehudah, which we know that's Josiah here, the king of Yehudah, who sent you to inquire of Yahuwah, so you shall say unto him, thus saith Yahuwah Elohim concerning the words which thou hast heard. Because your heart, Josiah, was tender, and you did humble yourself before Elohim, when you heard his words against this place, and against the inhabitants thereof, and humblest thyself before me, and did tear your clothes, and weep before me, I have heard you also, saith Yahuwah. Behold, I will gather you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your grave in peace, neither shall your eyes see all the evil that I will bring upon this place and upon the inhabitants of the same. So right here and now, not just northern tribes are cut off, but all of Israel is being cut off, because Yehudah, the younger sister, had done worse than the northern tribes had done at this point. Okay? Cut off right here. All of Israel. No more as a people were they the people of Elohim. Okay? And now it had all changed at this point. But did you notice that he still heard Josiah, and he allowed Josiah to live on in peace? And I'm sure Josiah, according to all that he's done, will end up in the kingdom. Okay? But all these people that did all these wicked things and never repented before they died, don't think it looks good for them. Let's continue. Then the king sent and gathered together all the elders of Yehuda and Jerusalem, and the king went up to the house of Yahuwah, and all the men of Yehuda and the inhabitants of Jerusalem and the Kohanim and the Levites and all the people, great and small, and he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, or the Torah, that was found in the house of Elohim. And the king stood in the place and made a covenant before Yahuwah to walk after Yahuwah and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and with all his soul, or everything he had, to perform the words of the covenant which are written in this book. And he caused all that were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin to stand to it. In other words, he made them do it. And the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of Elohim, the Elohim of their fathers. And Josiah took away all the abominations out of the countries that pertained to the ben of Israel, and made all that were present in Israel to serve, even to serve Yahuwah their Elohim, all the days they departed not from following Yahuwah Elohim of their fathers. So the days of Josiah the king. Moreover, chapter 35, Josiah kept a Passover unto Yahuwah in Jerusalem, and they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the first month, as it's written in the Torah. And he set the Kohanim in their offices and encouraged them to serve to the service of the house of Yahuwah, and said unto the Levites that taught all Israel, which were set apart unto Yahuwah, put the set apart ark, or the ark of the covenant, in the house which Solomon the ben of David, king of Israel, did build. It shall not be carried upon your shoulders. Serve now Yahuwah your Elohim and his people Israel. And prepare yourself by the families, not the houses, but the families of your fathers after their divisions, according to the writing of David, king of Israel, and according to the writing of Solomon his ben. And stand in the set apart place according to the divisions of the families of the fathers of your brethren, the people, and after the divisions of the families of the Levites, so kill the Passover, and set apart yourselves, and prepare your brethren, that they may do according to the word of Yahuwah by the hand of Moshe. Again, according to the Torah. Verse 7. And Josiah gave to the people of the flock lambs and kids for the Passover offerings, for all that were present, to the number of 33,000 bullocks. These were of the king's possessions. And his princes gave willingly unto the people, to the Kohanim and to the Levites, Hilkiah and Zechariah and Jehiel, rulers of the house of Elohim, gave unto the priest for the Passover offerings 2,600 small cattle, or that doesn't necessarily mean cows either, and 300 oxen. See, the oxen were more bovine. Everything else would have been goats and sheep and such. Verse 9. Hananiah and Shemaiah and Nathanael, his brother, and Hashbiah and Yael and Jozabad, chief of the Levites, gave unto the Levites for the Passover offerings 5,000, again, goats, sheep, things of that nature, and 500 oxen. So the service was prepared, and the Kohanim stood in their place, and the Levites in their divisions, according to the king's commandment. And they killed the Passover, and the priests sprinkled the blood from their hands, and the Levites skinned them. Verse 12. And they removed the burnt offerings that they might give according to the divisions of the families of the people to offer unto Yahuwah, as it was written in the book of Moshe, and so did they with the oxen. And they roasted the Passover with fire, as prescribed, but the other set apart offerings boiled they in pots and in cauldrons and in the pans, and divided them speedily among all the people. And afterward they made ready for themselves and for the priests, the Kohanim, because the Kohanim, the ben of Aaron, were loosed, or in offering. They were doing that, of the burnt offerings and the fat until night. They were so busy or covered up with the offerings that were done all the way until night. Therefore the Levites prepared for themselves, and for the Kohanim, the ben of Aaron, and the singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their place, or their station, according to the commandment of David and Asaph and Heman and Jeduthun, the king's seer, and the porters, or the gatekeepers, waited at every gate. They might not depart from their service, for their brethren the Levites prepared for them. So all the service of Yahuwah was prepared the same day to keep the Passover and to offer burnt offerings upon the altar of Yahuwah, according to the commandment of King Josiah. And the ben of Israel that were present kept the Passover at the time and the feast of unleavened bread 7 days. And there was no Passover like that kept in Jerusalem from the days of Samuel the prophet. Well, that's a long time. There hadn't been one like this since then. Neither did all the kings of Israel keep such a Passover as Josiah kept. And the Kohanim and the Levites and all Yehudah and Israel were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of the reign of Josiah was this Passover kept. After all this, when Josiah had prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, came up to fight against Charamish by Euphrates, and Josiah went out against him. But he sent ambassadors to him, saying, What have I to do with you, you king of Yehudah? I come not against you this day, but against the house, against the government, not the house, wherewith I have war. For Elohim commanded me to make haste. Refrain you from meddling with Elohim, who is with me, that he destroy you not. Nevertheless, Josiah would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself that he might fight with him, and listened not to the words of Necho from the mouth of Elohim, that's talking about our Elohim, and came to fight in the valley of Megiddo. Now, this Megiddo is the same place where they're talking about the battle of Armageddon in the last days. This here is, that's going to be the finishing of the battle, at the end of time, We're talking about the city of Megiddo again. Verse 23, and the archers shot at King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, Take me away, for I am badly wounded. 24, his servants therefore took him out of that chariot, and put him in the second chariot that he had, and they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died, and was buried in one of the sepulchres his fathers, all his fathers, descendants, and all Yehudah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. And Jeremiah lamented for Josiah, and all the singing men, or the psalmists, choir, and the singing women spake of Josiah in their lamentations, or their crying, to this day. To the day this book was written, they were still doing that, and made them an ordinance in Israel. Behold, they were written in the Lamentations, which we'll be reading later. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and his goodness, according to that which was written in the Torah of Elohim, and his deeds first and last, Behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Yehuda. Chapter 36. Then the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the ben of Josiah, and made him king in his father's stead in Jerusalem. Jehoahaz, I'll get it right here in a minute, was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And the king of Egypt deposed him at Jerusalem, and assessed the land in 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. Verse 4. And the king of Egypt made Eliakim, his brother, king over Yehuda and Jerusalem, and charged his name to Jehoiakim, and Necho took Jehoahaz, his brother, and carried him off to Egypt. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah Elohim. Nothing new, huh? And by this time they're already cut off anyway, okay? This is during the time when they really didn't have prophets going on, okay? Against him came up Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and bound him in chains to carry him away to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also carried off the vessels of the house of Yahuwah to Babylon and put them in the temple of Babylon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and his abominations which he did, and that was found in him, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Yehuda, and Jehoiakim his ben reigned in his stead. And Jehoiakim was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah. And when the year was expired, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babylon with the goodly vessels of the house of Yahuwah, and made Zedekiah his brother king over Yehuda and Jerusalem. And Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah his Elohim, and humbled not himself before Jeremiah the prophet, because obviously Yahuwah was still using his prophets to plead to them. We'll read that in the book of Jeremiah, okay, or Jeremiah. Verse 13, and he also rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by Elohim. But he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart from turning unto Yahuwah Elohim of Israel. Moreover, all the chief of the Kohanim and the people transgressed very much after the abomination, the detestable practices of the nations, and polluted the house of Yahuwah, which he had set apart in Jerusalem. And Yahuwah Elohim of their fathers sent to them by his messengers, which would be Malachim, okay, rising up right again and again, because he had surrounded on his people and on his dwelling place, Yahuwah had. But they mocked the messengers of the Malachim, okay, prophets. Okay, that's the Malachim he's talking about here. So don't put too much word on it, too much emphasis when the King James or any English translation translates to angel. It means Malachim, which means messengers. Same thing as here. But they mocked the messengers of Elohim and scoffed at his words and misused his prophets. That's the Malachim he sent was his prophets. Okay, until the wrath of Yahuwah arose against his people till there was no remedy. Verse 17, therefore he brought upon them the king of the Chaldees, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion upon young men or maidens, old man, or him that stooped of age. In other words, old people, young people, all of them. He gave them all into his hand, and all the vessels of the house of Elohim, great and small, and the treasures of the house of Yahuwah, and the treasure of the king and of his princes, all these he brought to Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. They burnt the house of Elohim, and brake down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all the places thereof with fire, and destroyed all the valuable vessels thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him, and his been until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, which we're going to read all about that later. Okay, Cyrus and all those ones like that. Okay, verse 21, to fulfill the word of Yahuwah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. Okay, we know back in the book of Numbers, okay, it talks about the Sabbath land rest. Israel had not done that. They had not kept the Sabbath rest of the land, and they didn't do anything really on a consistent basis that Yahuwah had commanded them. So all this time period, while they're there, the land's going to rest. Okay? For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath. Okay? See what it's talking about? She kept that for that time of rest to fulfill 70. Okay? To fulfill 70. Turn 2 pages here up. Oh. Now, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that's what I was just speaking of, that the word of Yahuwah, spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah, might be accomplished. Yahuwah stirred up the spirit of Cyrus the king. What that means, changed his attitude or his heart, in case of Cyrus the king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all the kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, thus saith Cyrus king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath Yahuwah Elohim of the Shamayim given me, and he hath charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Yehuda. Who is there among you of all his people? He's calling them out. Cyrus the king is. Yahuwah put that in his heart. Yahuwah his Elohim be with him, and let him go up to rebuild the city. Send him back to Jerusalem. Okay, that's the completion of the book of the Second Chronicles. Okay, we're going to start in the book of Ezra next Sabbath. Okay, in the book of Ezra, and we'll get into that, and it's going to talk about this after this 70 Sabbaths, or this land rest that was going on in Jerusalem. Okay, and what all that goes to. So we're going to catch up on all that. What happens next? Okay, next week. So when you get done watching this, go back now that it's over and click on subscribe and hit the like button for us. Give us a thumbs up, okay? And then hit the little bell so you get the notification when the next video's up. And may Yahuwah bless until we meet again.